Hello, Michelle.
Hey, Anne.
How are you? Well, let's begin by introducing ourselves. I'm Anne Althouse at the University of Wisconsin Law School and the blog Althouse.
And I'm Michelle Goldberg. I'm the author most recently of The Means of Reproduction, Sex, Power, and the Future of the World, which is a book about the global battle over women's rights and specifically over reproductive rights. I'm a senior correspondent at the American Prospect and a columnist for the Daily Beast.
And speaking of sex and books, we're here to talk about the extremely sexy Sarah Palin and her new book. She's going rogue. An American Life. Have you read the book, Michelle?
I have. I holed up with it. I was slightly mortified to buy it in my Brooklyn neighborhood.
I sent my husband to buy it for me because I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was afraid of what might happen.
Well, you know, it's funny. I called one bookstore near my house to ask if they had it, and they said they're all reserved. And I was kind of stunned because I live in, not kind of Sarah Palin country.
Well, they probably didn't order many copies.
And I said, really? And they said, yeah, all journalists.
Oh, maybe they didn't want to have any more copies than they knew they were going to sell, and they didn't want to have a stack of books. But here in Madison, Wisconsin, when you went in the door at Borders, there was a whole big stack.
Well, there was tons, and there was tons in the Barnes and Noble. She clearly has fans in the most unlikely places.
Yeah. But now I think an interesting thing is that we were called upon to talk about Sarah Palin, and we talked back in July about Sarah Palin. I put up on my blog just a few moments ago because violating the usual blogging heads approach. There are no official rules, but I actually put up a post saying that we were going to do this dialogue to try to get some of my readers to help me generate some questions, and I put up the clip from our last July's dialogue where there was a segment about how much you hated Sarah Palin, and you were quite exercised about her. So I thought it was interesting when Blogging Heads went to put on a dialogue this week about the extremely popular book that everyone's talking about, that they put you, and they asked me, and
that you were the best thing they could do for
I was the best they could do, and I just think. I just think it says something about Blogging Heads, and I have a real problem with it, that I was the best that they could do against you when you hate Sarah Palin.
Although,
I have just, my post on the book was Sarah Palin is dumb. I mean, I don't know if that was before I read the book, before the book was available to...
So we have an honest disagreement over whether Sarah Palin is dumb or completely loathsome.
No, but yeah, I know. So, I mean, that's the level of Blogging Heads dispute. Is Sarah Palin dumb, or is she the devil?
Well, I don't think she's the devil. And, I think that's actually the level of the dispute among most...
among intelligent people. You hear that, everyone. The dispute among intelligent people is whether Sarah Palin is merely dumb or quite evil.
But I actually have to say, I've kind of given up. When I saw that on your blog, I looked back at that clip, and I haven't even been able to maintain that level of passion about her. Even really hating someone is itself a form of engagement with them.
Well, she's just wasting your time if she's making you feel like that. Why are people... I mean, I know I said this back in July. Why are people bothering with her? It's boring. Okay. So anyway, I have my beef in about the Blogging Heads that they didn't get someone who's actually on the other side. But also, I'd like to say that since I wrote the post, Sarah Palin is dumb, back when I only had 2 pages, which were leaked in advance of the book, I hadn't read the book, having read almost all of the whole book now, which was just available Tuesday, a day or two when I'm really busy in the week. I read most of it. I don't think it's dumb. I think it is what it's supposed to be. It's a memoir about what it was like to grow up Sarah Palin, to become Sarah Palin, and to be tapped to run for vice president, and then to be put through the crazy process that exists for people to, the gauntlet that people have to run when they're going for national office. I think that was all presented very well. It's kind of a fun read. It's pretty light, but it is what it is. It's the story of personal feeling. I don't know why the book is something of great import, but what do you think?
I guess, again, like I said, I am, I'm so bored of her. I'm so sick of her. I still don't like her, but I actually begged my editor at the Daily Beast, let me write about something else. But they said, this is Sarah Palin week. It's Sarah Palin week all over the place.
Well, this is going to be a hell of a dialogue. You're bored with it, and I'm a little annoyed that I'm the only person they could come up with. So, want to talk about Eric Holder and the mess of KSM in New York City?
We can move on to that in a minute.
Okay.
But I just think, I mean, my feeling about, I thought the book, again, if I was I'm curious to know what you think of it, as a conservative, because I think it reflects pretty badly on her. It made me wish that she would run for president.
The book, it reflects badly on conservatives, you're saying? Or?
No, not on her. And I think that it was, you said you didn't finish it. I think in the end it's pretty clear that she is going to run for president.
I assume that.
And so...
What exactly do you
think
reflects badly on conservatives? Something about the way
on her. No, it reflects badly on her, and I think she's bad. I think she's good for the Democrats.
The question is, what do I think of the way the book reflects on her? And the assumption is that I'm a conservative, so that what I think of how the book reflects on her is significant. I'm just trying to focus.
Oh, what was the question? I guess as I'm saying this, okay, as a liberal, I'm saying this as a liberal. I'm more or less. Although I'm sick of her, I'm more or less happy to have her out there. I think she's good for, I think the more we see of Sarah Palin, the better it is for her political opponents. I'm saying, what's your perspective on...
My perspective on Sarah Palin is that she articulates conservative values plainly and comprehensibly and in an attractive package that it seems genuine to a lot of people, that she can get out there, she can get a lot of people to want to listen to her. Clearly, millions of people want to read the book. Was it millions? Lots of people want to read the book. It's been a bestseller since before it came out. So she is able to convey that message. Now, the book itself is a memoir on what it feels like to be her. It's not a big policy statement. I saw that Rod Dreher, is that how you say his name? On NPR, had a review of the book. Of course, he had already opposed Sarah Palin a year ago, but they picked him to be the conservative who looks at Sarah Palin's book, and the idea was, she didn't have enough substantive policy in there. But the fact is, my response to that was, this is the equivalent of Dreams from My Father. This is her book of what it's like.
Do you really think that?
Let me finish what I'm saying. This is her presentation of what it's like to be her, what it was like growing up, how she came to be what she is, a full picture of her as a person. If you want a policy statement of all the substantive things she believes, well, that would be her Audacity of Hope. That would be the second book, and I'm sure she has people working with her who will flesh out what she is going to stand for as she runs for president. I assume she will in 3 years. There's no reason to jump the gun and be too detailed about that. God knows Barack Obama wasn't very detailed about what he was going to do until pretty late in the game. And in fact, even now, a year into his presidency practically, he's hardly been clear about what he's doing. So the idea of lack of substantive policy, if that's a criticism of her as a good candidate, I don't believe it, because Barack Obama won the presidency. She's the equivalent on the conservative side of Barack Obama. Now, I don't think that's a good thing. I don't want the conservative Barack Obama. I think Barack Obama has been terrible as a president. We've elected a candidate, an empty candidate, who never was clear about what he was going to do as president. I don't want to see that happen again, but he certainly has laid down the plan for how one becomes president by being that kind of person. So I'm afraid that she's doing that, but she's no worse, she's no more embarrassing than Barack Obama himself.
See, I find that so astonishing that I almost don't even know how to engage with it, because...
Well, at least we have something to talk about now.
Well, I think that to me, the idea of comparing this book to Dreams from My Father is like comparing, Twilight to War and Peace or something. I mean, it's just such a kind of it's in such a different category.
They're both insipid creative writing exercises in promoting a political icon. They are so similar, it's absurd.
No, they're not similar. This is where I see them as being profoundly different. I mean, besides just the actual quality of the writing, the total lack of depth and nuance, I mean, it just strikes me.
The liberal always claims to have nuance. Nuance was a big loser for John Kerry, of course. Nuance is kind of a poison.
Well, nuance might not be. I don't think nuance is popular, but I still think it's a literary value.
Do you think that Dreams from My Father is an excellent work of literature?
I do. I really do. And
really?
I think that was how it was received at a time when...
Oh, of course it was received.
But that book came out at a time when the idea of Barack Obama as a presidential candidate... Of
course it was received well. The receivers are liberals who want the man. They wanted the man. They wanted to receive him. They were hot for him. Of course they received it well. If you saw it and you didn't know what he was and what he stood for and the hope that he was for the Democratic Party, you would have looked at that as a literary work, as a memoir.
I think we should not do this.
Dreams from My Father.
You know what? I'm bored with this conversation. This is not a conversation.
You are not prepared to defend what you want to defend.
No, you're not letting me talk.
Well, you interrupt me too, Michelle. Let me just finish my point before you enter, because I was making a point, you interrupt. I just want to say that Dreams from My Father is a creative writing assignment on a pretty low level. It's not a beautiful work of literature. To say it's Tolstoy compared to whatever you compared it to is absurd. To say that it's nuanced in a literary sense is just political dribble. And you should own up to that and not try to bail out.
Well, I'm not going to own up to that. Well, I'm not going to. I find that such a ridiculous statement. Again, the idea that I should own up to the fact that it's political
nuanced word. And say something more elaborated and substantive in answer to me. Don't just call me ridiculous.
No, I said I thought that was a ridiculous argument. I think your contempt for nuance is
No, I'm not contempt for nuance. I'm saying you are not nuanced, that you're flattering yourself. Like many liberals, you're patting yourself.
Seriously? No, I'm not patting myself on the back.
You're patting on yourself on the back and complimenting yourself as nuanced in the typical fashion.
First of all, I don't want to be put on the spot as the defender of liberalism, even though that to some extent is what Blogging Heads is about. But this is, I'm seriously, and I think that this is a waste of both of our time. This is a waste of our time, right? We're just going to yell at each other. We see things so radically different that there's no middle ground.
Michelle, if you've recently rewatched the July dialogue, you got very hot and passionate, and I was kind of cool and laughing it off and so on. But I rewatched it, and I thought, you really laid it on thick with the emotionalism. And I just want to stand up to that. I want to take the position all right, so don't bail out just because I'm pushing back with a certain level of emotionalism too. You did that in spades back in July, and I'm here. I actually think the book is a bore, and I'm not that interested, and as you are not either. But you're saying things about conservatives. You're saying things about you would like to say that she is shallow and has no substance to her, and meanwhile, Obama is Leo Tolstoy. And I think that's hilarious.
That was
I'm calling you on it. I'd like to hear you defend what you're saying instead of using, to say that you're nuanced and then resort to just saying that's ridiculous.
No, I didn't say that I'm nuanced. I said I found his book nuanced.
Terms like that. I think I'm calling on you on that. And your response to that is to say, well, you'd like to bail out. You just want to end the conversation. There's nothing to be said because I'm putting you on the spot here. I'm asking you to defend yourself.
You're really not. You're not asking me to. You're not giving me a chance to defend myself. You're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say that I'm nuanced. I said that I found Dreams from My Father quite nuanced. I thought as a consideration. I wish I had it in front of me, but as a consideration of race, as just as a kind of Bildungsroman, it just struck me as not this typical self-presentation of somebody who wanted to. It struck me as. It felt to me more like a memoir than like a campaign book. It felt to me more like a portrait of a complicated and nuanced, if ambitious, human being with, contradictory feelings about race, about his family, about his place in the world, about his stumbling through various kinds of leftism towards some kind of responsible, centrist, impassioned liberalism. I believed in that book there was a lot of reckoning with different ideas, and it showed a kind of political and intellectual evolution. I don't see anything remotely similar in Going Rogue. Any kind of engagement with ideas, or certainly any kind of document of any kind of personal evolution. There was a lot in it that was demonstrably false. It struck me as rather self-pitying.
You think so? You think Going Rogue is more self-pitying than Dreams from My Father?
Absolutely.
Well, I would argue the opposite. I mean, I think that Dreams from My Father...
Well, what's self-pitying about Dreams from My Father?
One thing about Dreams from My Father is you have someone who really didn't come from a solid family background that she has. So she had a very different kind of life. She describes the kind of life that she has as a sort of tough, resilient person living in a cold climate, spending hours a day stacking wood and hunting, large animals and things of that sort, developing the kind of values that she learned through her father, who was there in her family, teaching her kind of the sort of values that are attractive to conservatives. He was more of a lost soul, buffeted around in different places, not really absorbing the typical kind of an American life. He felt lost in many ways because his father was gone, and he had to search for that. So it's true that was an interesting
But did you
story.
think that was self-pitying?
I'm saying as a literary work, I don't see it as being particularly well written. I think, just the literary style, the way he described the way nature would be having the same emotions, the leaves were rustling, this and that. I mean, I don't have the book here to read passages, but I think as a work of literature, I think people who care about literature would laugh at it and, I'd rather see something clearly written in a straightforward style like Going Rogue than something in a sort of creative, although there's kind of creative writing crap in Going Rogue as well. I was making fun of some of those things, but I think it's a different kind of a story.
Rogue.
Another thing that makes it different
but
is in Dreams from My Father.
I mean, what you just described was pathos, but did you see that as being self-pitying? Did you see him describing his lack of a father figure? I mean, do you are you saying that? I mean, you're saying it was more of a sad story, but
It's a more sad story.
Read that as being, again, kind of self? Did you feel like he felt very terribly sorry for himself? I really didn't.
Noticed about it that bothered me was the constant discussion of his father, which I thought was done to appeal to American liberals who would be interested in him as a black man or who was living among white persons and longed for his African roots. But I think that what was left out was the story of his mother and what his mother did. I mean, I think that she then subsequently died, and he does say in the introduction that he feels bad that he didn't pay more attention to her. But he had a supportive family around him, or some supportive people, and there was little talk of what his mother was really like, what his grandparents really did for him, as opposed to how they fit into the racial template, which I'm sure is what he learned in his education, especially at Harvard Law School. This idea of, look, you have this great political future if you present yourself in these terms of racial reconciliation. You present yourself as a black person and the struggle that you had, that will be very effective. And I think in doing that, he eclipsed the story of his grandparents, of his mother, those people, what they did for him. He's more like just a lone person. He's on his own in the world. It is interesting material. I'm saying that as a literary matter, it isn't as well written as people like to think it is. As I think liberals like to feel good about him, but the whole thing is presented so that liberals can feel good about him. I think Sarah Palin's book is more, it's looking back over her life and in fairly few concise words talking about what the campaign was like. And it's got a lot in there about the criticism of the media and so forth. It's a different sort of book because it really isn't deeply reflective of her personal psychology. I think maybe she is a lot less of a
psychology or her
person.
ideas, right?
Excuse me?
I mean, her psychology or her political ideas.
It's not like Dreams from My. There's very little of his political ideas in Dreams from My Father either. It's a personal memoir about the story of becoming the person that she is or he is today, and the place of it isn't to be a big policy statement. As I said before, I think this book is equivalent to Dreams from My Father. And if you say, as Rod Dreher said, that there's not enough policy substance in the book, I think it's criticizing the book for not being something that it never tried to be, and that should be her second book. That should be her Audacity of Hope. We'll see what that book is. Presumably they're working on it.
Did you see it? She wrote quite a bit about, how upsetting it was to her to not be able to go running during the campaign. How upsetting it was to her that they forced her to sit in this dark room and do debate prep when she wanted to be out exercising.
And how they decided that they brought in a nutritionist. They decided that they kept her in a dark room. They prevented her from exercising, seeing her family. They gave her ridiculous index cards that had non-answers on them. It was all very condescending. And when she said, "Could you just schedule me a half an hour to go running?" she never really finally got to do it, and then they decided then they started criticizing her for being on the Atkins diet, which she wasn't. They didn't like what she was eating, and they made a point of bringing in a nutritionist. I mean, the way she was treated, Barack Obama wrote about being a black person among white people. I think she is writing about being a woman among men, and well, there were women involved
really,
too. But the way she was treated was very much about her being a woman.
I mean, really, do people typically get to have exercise scheduled in when they're on the campaign trail? I mean, my understanding was that it was a pretty grueling,
she said she needed
marathon.
Didn't Barack Obama go exercise? I mean, she said that's what she needed.
It struck me as being a fair. I mean, and it was repeated quite a bit. It just struck me as amazing that she would expect readers to somehow say, "Oh, that poor woman and how they abused her. They wanted her to."
No. What I was saying was not that they wouldn't let her go running. I think that is in the book to kind of flesh out the kind of person she was. She's physical. She's active. These other people are smoking and eating junk food. They're stuck in rooms. They're breathing stale indoor air. And she's the outdoors person. She's from Alaska. That to some extent is pop culture stuff, but I think it works reasonably well. But I think that what's sexist, what is particularly objectionable, and what she objected to there, is that when she said she wanted to exercise, they criticized her for being on a diet, which she wasn't. She says,
well, I don't think
and for bringing in a nutritionist. Oh, you need to eat the right food, and they, in a patronizing way, tried to get her to eat different food and carbohydrates, and they were really treating her like a kind of a female pet, I think, and that there is feminist content here that should be engaged with seriously. And she presents it in a pretty lighthearted way. There's a section where she talks about how early in the campaign, or maybe before she was the candidate, she was critical, or there was always a film clip of her criticizing Hillary Clinton for whining about how she was treated.
Right, that was the one kind of political evolution that I feel like she described in the book.
And she said, now she understands that, and she has sympathy with that. But, there really is a lot of material. I think that if feminists could, get off their liberal high horse for a little while and really engage with this and see, despite the fact that she's conservative, could see the feminist material here, which she presents in this, positive spirit, and she doesn't like to go into the whining, complaining part.
But that's all it is. The book is just whining and complaining.
No, it isn't.
That means all the book is whining and complaining.
No, that's the way it's been presented in the press.
No,
I was surprised.
That's the way I read it. That's the way it presented itself off the page to me.
No, she presents herself in a very... First of all, she does take responsibility.
That Katie Couric is there after she said she's on such a high. She went to this rally, and oh my God, there's Katie Couric. Poor me, I have to do another interview.
She didn't want to see Katie Couric in because she knew what Katie Couric was doing. By the way, I think Katie Couric should respond to this book by putting the unedited interviews up online.
Me too.
There's a lot
of agree with that. I think that would be fantastic.
I would challenge.
I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, Katie Couric should do that because
we have found
there's all this
stuff. Absolute agreement.
Yes, there's a real critique of the media. There's a real critique of Katie Couric, and it's easily answerable if you put, or at least put the whole transcripts up. Let's see what it all was,
I wish they would.
See if the editing was as biased as it purports to be. I think she does a great job of talking about how she felt seeing these different people managing her, suddenly being plunged into all of this. It's vivid. It's good. She is critical of herself. She does take responsibility. This idea that it's all score settling and that she blames others. I got that impression from the 2 pages that I saw excerpted from the book over the weekend that made me write the Sarah Palin is dumb post. But I don't think that the overall tone of the book is like that. I think that's an unfair presentation of it, and I'm going to write another post about that. But the idea that she's just complaining, well, you have to present all sides of it. I think basically she presents herself as a person that is, a can-do kind of traditional sort of a person, outdoorsy, positive, optimistic person. And of course, part of this conservative message is optimism. Optimism about America, optimism about things that can be done through hard work and so on. And I think she models that in the book.
To me, I guess, first of all, I found it, if not unbelievable, then her psychology is so different than that of kind of any other person I've ever encountered, that as to seem unrecognizable. I mean, the idea that there was no introspection, no doubt, no what does this mean when she was asked to be a vice presidential candidate. That
Don't
she
you think
just
we
said
need
that
to
she
blame
felt.
McCain for that? I mean, I think her response to that was they
Oh,
knew
yeah,
everything
sure, we
about
need to blame
me.
McCain, but
they
can
studied
you
it all,
imagine?
and they
I'm
thought
just
I
saying,
could do it.
can you imagine that as a human being, no matter who you are, especially someone who was as much of a surprise as she was, that this caused kind of no turmoil, that
I
this
think
offer...
she was too easily, I think she wanted to help and they needed somebody and they convinced her to do it. They decided she could do it, and that was really their responsibility. Now,
and that wouldn't set but if you were her, wouldn't that have set your mind spinning? I mean, wouldn't you have had some sense of upheaval?
I don't have what it takes to run for president or vice president.
Right, neither do I, and neither does she.
Everyone that presents, why did Barack Obama think he could be president? What
because
nerve
he's a great president. Because he's doing a fantastic job, in my opinion.
It's going really badly, Michelle.
I think you're really wrong. I think that he's constantly underestimated.
In any case, if we want to talk about...
things are going badly in the country, but I think that he's done... a year ago we thought that there was going to be a full-scale economic meltdown, a second Great Depression. Things are still pretty bad, but they're turning around. But it's turning around slowly. We're close to healthcare reform. I think things are, I think that he has a huge amount of challenges, but I think he's doing quite well, and he's as kind of level-headed and thoughtful as I hoped he would be.
His Far Eastern trip was a bust. But anyway... And the whole decision to put KSM in federal court in Manhattan, and
I don't know. I think most New Yorkers.
There's so many problems.
He's not dithering. I don't think he's dithering on Afghanistan. I think he's taking his time to make an intelligent decision about in the face of a series of options that are all bad. I'm glad we have a president who's thoughtful and nuanced
he always
in his
presents
thinking.
It as thoughtfulness. It's like a thoughtfulness ritual, and there's the liberals love to see this demonstration, acting out of thoughtfulness.
Right. I don't see it as acting out. I see it as actually being thoughtful. I don't see it as a pantomime of thoughtfulness. Yes, as a liberal, I love that. That's why I loved Barack Obama, because I believe that he is a cool-headed intellectual, and I think it's fantastic to have such a person. I think it's fantastic to have a constitutional law professor in charge of our government. I'm glad that they're trying KSM in New York, as are most New Yorkers.
I know a lot of constitutional law professors, and one myself, and believe me, we would not make good presidents. But Barack Obama somehow thought that he would make a good president, despite a near complete lack of experience. But he went ahead and did it. She stepped up and agreed to be vice president when other people decided she was the one. She agreed to go along with it. Now, that might have been too exuberant and absurd. And I think it is, and I would never do it. But it was certainly no worse than Barack Obama. Sarah Palin is simply the Republican counterpart of Barack Obama.
I'm just asking you, does her presentation of her kind of what she was going through at that time ring true to you? That it would be that kind of seamless, that she wouldn't blink, even metaphorically. I mean, that it wouldn't set your head spinning, that it wouldn't, again, I'm not even talking about, the kind of, outrageous hubris of her and McCain thinking she could have this job.
Why do you think Barack Obama thought he could do it? I mean, I think she thought she could do it because she was one of these exuberant persons who was taught to have self-confidence and had enough success doing the things that she did, that she thought if a task was put in front of her that people thought she could do, she would step up and she would just do it. And I think some of it is actually belief in God. I think some of it is, from the book I get the impression that she really thought that this was what God was putting before her, just like having a child with special needs, and that when the trials are put in front of her, everybody has their own trial. Remember, she spoke of that, having a kind of a belief. She quotes Plato at one point, saying something like, every person represents a struggle, that she has her trial in front of her, that's what it is to do, and she will do it. So I think that it's really kind of a religious belief. Now, I don't know what it is with Barack Obama, why he had that confidence. I tend to think it's because he was surrounded with people who invested him with confidence, who thought he could be the one, and he kept getting positive feedback on that score. Now he's president, and the feedback is not so completely positive, and I don't think he has any life experience to prepare him for what he's got to do now. I think it might be just... he might be just in this state of shock. I don't know. Deer in the headlights.
Really? Do you see? But do you think that he's floundering? I mean, I know you think he's doing a bad job, but do you think that he's kind of? I know you think he's doing a bad job, and I think he's doing a good job. But do you actually think that he's really shaken up and unnerved? I mean, that's just I don't get that impression at all.
I think he will continue to do his routine of being thoughtful and grounded, even as the world crashes around him. Excuse me?
So you think that it's totally a fraud, that this idea that he's really just trying to weigh all the options and see his way through to some kind of a better...
I certainly hope not.
What do you think is going on with regard to his decision-making on Afghanistan?
I voted for him, and to this day, I still think McCain would have been worse. I still think McCain would have been worse. I don't think McCain was prepared to be president. As far as Sarah Palin and vice president, my problem was with McCain, and of course McCain picked her. So whatever's wrong with her, it had to do with her going up too early or aspiring too high, too soon. I think this is a problem with McCain. And I don't think, I'm glad McCain was not trusted with the presidency, but I certainly didn't think Barack Obama would be so indecisive and would be surrounded by people who were doing such a poor job for him. I think Eric Holder's performance at the hearing yesterday was just shockingly bad. And actually,
I missed the hearing. I can't speak to it.
Well, I know we don't have that as a planned topic, but I didn't really plan to do this as being all about Barack Obama. But I do very fundamentally think that Sarah Palin is the counterpart among conservatives for what Barack Obama is. And I'm kind of in the middle. I'm aloof from both of these people. I have taken a position of cruel neutrality in all of this. And I think that if you like Barack Obama and you hate Sarah Palin, step back for a minute and think about how it looks from the other side. Think about the ways in which Sarah Palin is like Barack Obama. Now, if you think Barack Obama is good, then your advice, what I hear implicitly, or what I would extract from your advice to conservatives, is they should pick Sarah Palin. They should get all behind Sarah Palin because she will, I don't know. She'll give you everything that Obama gave to the other side. I don't like either of them anymore, but I think it's bad that America is so focused on these kind of pop culture political figures who are able to get people jazzed up and be a screen onto which people can project their hopes.
I don't know. I feel like if the conservative movement, if Sarah Palin really is the Barack Obama of the conservative movement, then I find that immensely comforting. I mean, it means that the conservative movement is in even worse shape than I had ever imagined. I just see her again. It's like, I think that we spoke about this last time. It seems as if they keep kind of coming up with these completely preposterous ersatz characters because they see them as being in some way equivalent to Democratic figures that they totally misapprehend. So, we had Hillary Clinton. Okay, fine. We'll give you Sarah Palin. You have Barack Obama. Fine. We're going to give you this Michael Steele. There are these, kind of ridiculous, buffoonish simulacra that I think fundamentally misunderstand both the strength and the appeal of the kind of these Democratic candidates.
I think that misstates where Sarah Palin came from. I think she was what she was before we started looking at her. I don't think she was concocted by the Republican Party.
No, she was plucked out of relative political obscurity. I don't. So with Michael Steele, right? They didn't concoct him, but they didn't have to give him a pedestal either.
Yeah, well, right, she was given an instant pedestal, and I think that put a terrible spotlight on her at a time where I think the fact that she did as well as she did, she deserves some credit for that. But I think that Barack Obama was boosted up by a lot of people who he represented hope for, who wanted to think things about him. So I think the idea that the Republicans are just copying. I think Sarah Palin was what she was without any attempt to turn her into a copy of Obama, but I think that she has become, for a certain group of conservatives, the equivalent of what Obama was for lefties. Now, Obama ended up winning over a lot of other people, including moderates like me, by speaking in general and pragmatic terms and seeming so intelligent that I believed that when he got into office, he would do what needed to be done as president, that he would take the task seriously and not simply be batted about by these left-wing ideas and by people who had stronger ideas about what ought to be done. I thought he would
what
step
kind of
up to his
left-wing ideas are you
leadership.
talking about?
That he would step up to his leadership, and that he would see what needed to be done, and that he would be practical and pragmatic and real world about that, and also inclusive and post-racial, those things that I think he was promising to do. I think he has disappointed the moderates.
I guess it seems to me he's done exactly what he thought he was going to. He's done like almost precisely what he said he was going to do, at least from my perspective.
I guess we all projected different hopes. I mean, he had that quality that he allowed us to project.
Well, no, it's interesting because I talked to a lot of people. A lot of people on the left find him, are quite disappointed because they had projected onto him some kind of, that he was some kind of progressive messiah. It struck me that he was always a liberal, but a liberal pragmatist and incrementalist. And maybe I just projected the right hopes onto him.
That's what I wanted. I wanted the pragmatic.
Well, I guess we have very different ideas about what's pragmatic because it seems to me that he's been very pragmatic. I mean, he was pragmatic in terms of the stimulus package, which didn't make anyone happy, but seems to have done a good part of what it set out to do. It strikes me that he's done a number of kind of things that are very unpopular on the left, his bailouts of Wall Street, the ways that he's propped up the economy by saving some of these companies that were deemed too big to fail. He's made compromises on healthcare that I dislike, but that seems to be what you have to do to get it done.
Conservatives don't like the taking over of the car industry.
Well, either do liberals. I mean, nobody likes that, but it's... Right? Nobody likes it. But
to the extent that he's done things that the lefties don't like, I'm glad to see that. But I think mostly he seems to try to avoid doing things, and then he keeps leaving and going on these trips. I think it was funny the way the Chinese kind of prevented him from being able to get his big photo ops and look like he was a big hero in a foreign land. I think that whole attempt at doing an image assault fell completely flat. And meanwhile, during the whole period when he was doing that, everybody was talking about Sarah Palin. For some reason, it's just a post-mortem political memoir, and everybody wanted to talk about that, and not the great president's trip to China.
I mean, really, it surprises you that people would want to talk about a kind of somewhat salacious, innuendo-filled, or not innuendo in the political sense, not in the sexual sense, but that they would rather talk about this than talk about foreign policy and
I think Barack Obama
and that they would rather talk about that than talk about whether the yen should float against the renminbi should float against the dollar. I mean, of course, people would rather talk about Sarah Palin and talk about foreign policy.
Obama's trip to the Far East was meant to be a big deal. Obama is the president. This is just a book about a failed campaign. The fact that she was able to suck all the oxygen out of the room, as I think somebody said. Was that Rod Ryan? One of these people said, it's bad for Republicans because they can't get anything themselves going because Sarah Palin is hogging the spotlight. But, I mean, by the same token, she hogged it from Obama at a time when he was trying to do something that looked glorious to distract attention away from the horrible dithering over Afghanistan and the endless horror of the healthcare bill.
You keep talking about the horrible dithering over Afghanistan. I mean, does it strike you that the solution in Afghanistan is obvious? And if he indeed, was unhappy with any of the options that were presented to him by his advisors, isn't it responsible for him to then go and say, no, bring me something else? I mean,
it looks as if
in what way is he dithering? What is it that you see? What is the decisive action that you think he should be taking?
He's taking too long to make a decision.
Why?
He was asked for more. Just decide, do something, and don't show weakness.
So you think it's more important just to do something?
To our enemies. And hello.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I think he's showing weakness to our enemies, and I think he's giving signs of just trying to end the war on terror, turning the KSM matter into a criminal matter. Turning it into a criminal crime issue rather than a war. I think he's dramatically trying, but he won't come out and just do it and say it. He acted like he had nothing to... Holder said that Barack Obama had nothing to do with the decision to try KSM in New York. So, to some extent, Obama seems distant and disengaged, and to another extent, he seems to be engaged, but making terrible decisions or making a show of thinking, but not deciding.
I know you think KSM is a terrible decision, but you're saying just do something. isn't it? I mean,
own
don't
up
you
to what
see
your positions are and actually stand by them and show leadership. I don't think he wants to be a leader. I think he's just through and through a candidate.
I think that I think it shows leadership to say, I'm not going to be rushed on a decision of such profound import, and to actually kind of, the idea that whether or not you make a decision on Afghanistan now or in 2 weeks from now is more important than making the best possible decision. Just strikes me as
resisting being rushed. He's dragging his feet. I mean, the whole routine is to delay. He doesn't want, either he's doing things and not telling us, or all he can do is put things off. It's not a refusing to be rushed. I mean, don't rush me is kind of a joke after all these months.
Well, it's not been all these months since he just got these recommendations, what was it, like a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
On Afghanistan?
Yes, he got, right? I mean, he got these series of, he asked for these 4 plans that would either
I think the request
increase troops by 30,000 or 10,000, and he's at the same time, well, first of all, there was a kind of completely fraudulent election that changed the game somewhat. It strikes me that there is, given that all of the options are so terrible and that there's quite a lot to be said against ramping up the war, that he would say, none of these plans that you've presented me with are good enough. Let's come up with something better. Perhaps I have that liberal fetishization of thought or of debate and process.
That's why we have universities.
Nuance.
We have universities as holding pens for people who just want to spend their whole life thinking. He was there. He left. He went into politics. Presumably that meant he could be an active leader. He held himself out as someone who could do that. If he just wants to think, he could be off on the sidelines writing books about things like the rest of us.
But I think that I think that a little bit of extra thought is to be welcome in such a complex situation.
All right. Well, I think it's more than a little bit, but anyway. So how crazy is Andrew Sullivan? Have you been reading the Andrew Sullivan? Decided.
Well, I don't know. He went dark, right?
He went dark, and then he came back. And what's going on there? What is he talking about? He's putting together. He just sounds like a raving conspiracy theorist. I put up a little clip from the movie Slacker, where there's a great scene where this young man who's just completely into JFK assassination conspiracies just goes chattering off like a fool. And I thought, that's what Andrew Sullivan reminded me of. What is he talking about? The whole subject of trig is so beside the point of anything that matters. And to be so interested in a lady's womb is just weird.
I agree with you about the trig thing. I was actually in Wasilla reporting for The Nation, shortly after Sarah Palin was nominated, and I heard the most wild rumors about every aspect of this woman's life. The one thing that almost everybody agreed about was that, yes, we all know that trig is her baby. But I will say, I will say that reading the book reminded me to a certain extent of reading, say, like 9/11 Truth or Literature, or creationism, in that they're reading her book, because there's so much in it that's kind of not true, but in order to explain why it's not true, you need to go so deep into the weeds of really kind of recondite details about, say, the trooper investigation of Mike Wooten, that just, to a certain extent, I understand why trying to kind of disassemble some of these untruths would take a bit of time. The untruths are more, again, on the order of, the real origins of some of these complaints against Mike Wooten, or, again, the bridge to nowhere. It was amazing to me that she's still denying the bridge to nowhere, or that she's still denying that she supported it.
Well, to me, it's just a political memoir of the sort that they all are. Oh, well, I put up this post on my blog to try to get people to generate questions so I'd have something to say to you, because I felt like I had nothing to say. Mm-hmm. and my favorite quote was, "Ask her if she recalls, to the nearest 11, how many fact checkers the AP used on Obama's books."
Well, I guess I mean, as far as I don't know if they used any, but I think that I'm sure, and I'm sure that you see that as being an example of dread liberal bias. I kind of see it more as an example of the fact that she has a reputation for mendacity.
It's just that all these books are
people thought that this search was going to be a lot richer and more fruitful.
There was that DNC memo that went out about all the like 20 lies, and everything was called everything that was distorted or everything that was puffed was suddenly a lie. I just think, you just sound like a liar yourself when you call things like that lies.
There's a continuum in the book between distortions and outright lies.
It's the same as every other political memoir. This is just getting fine-tooth combed more than the usual, for good reason, because she's a potential presidential candidate and people want to destroy her. As Rush Limbaugh likes to say, that the other side will tell you who they're afraid of by who they're always talking about.
I guess I hope they think that. I hope they think we're afraid of her and they put her up for that reason. Fine. But I will say this. To me, the big difference between, like, Sarah Palin lies and the lies that other... all politicians, lie and dissemble to a certain extent. To me, what's kind of astonishing about her is repeating these falsehoods even after they've been kind of definitively disproved. So I think I wrote in the Daily Beast that it would be as if Hillary Clinton wrote a memoir and included a section about her, kind of daring landing under fire in Bosnia. Usually a politician will kind of stop telling a lie once it's been revealed as a kind of total untruth.
If we're going to do a really fair comparison about who's the worst liar, I think it'll be quite a contest. I'd be interested to see that, but I would like to see equal resources and critical eye aimed at all of them equally.
Really? Aren't conservatives aiming a critical eye at, haven't they aimed a critical eye at Dreams from My Father? It seems that there's at least as much kind of conspiratorial research going on, conspiratorial spinning about Barack Obama as there is about Sarah Palin.
Well, what about the mainstream press? We're talking about AP, not the opposition. Of course the opposition will, but what about the regular mainstream press? That's a big part of her book, is the criticism.
Again, I know, and I know that you think that's a valid criticism, and to me it just seems to be a kind of criticism of the fact that, the press insists often on reporting. Look, I don't think the press is perfect, but often I think that what, conservative media criticism is essentially a criticism of the fact that reality, in my opinion, has a liberal bias. But in terms of who's the biggest liar, again, I think that what's amazing to me about her is that she just kind of proceeds in this, almost kind of impressively indomitable way, as if all of these stories that she's told have not been kind of definitively refuted. And I wonder if that's what some of these people love about her, is that she really does.
See, I think it's
she has created and exists in a totally alternative, self-contained reality.
But Michelle,
the evidence of the world can't make a chink in.
But Michelle, you sound like you're in a self-contained reality too. You're saying reality has a liberal bias. You're saying these things have been definitively refuted. They haven't been definitively refuted. There's a controversy about various things. Of course, she presented herself in a good light in her memoir. What does one expect? What are these, all of these...
Well, no, for example...
The idea that she would still present her side of the story. All the politicians do.
I'm asking, do you think that it's been definitively... Do you think it's been... do you think that there's a debate about whether or not she supported the so-called Bridge to Nowhere before she was against it?
I'd have to research that separately. I can't on the spot answer that. I don't know. I haven't read the stuff on that to even know.
There's been quite a lot of report. There was quite a lot of reporting, and often it's not that she's even.
Homework if that was specifically on the assignment, but I find reading the book things like Troopergate, I find that just like excruciatingly boring. I'm not going to try to figure that out unless it's my job.
Well, that's the thing, and you have to get deep into the weeds of the most kind of ridiculous and petty small-town politics. Mm-hmm. Although, if you read some of the reports that the state trooper investigation of Mike Wooten, produced, I wouldn't recommend it. They're certainly, a drag to get through, but they do show that there's, tremendous distortion and that goes beyond simply kind of presenting her side of the story, I thought, in the way that she tells, in the way that she recounts all of that in the book. There's quite a bit of that where, it has a kind of surface plausibility that doesn't stand up.
I just think that's the stuff of a political memoir. I can't believe that there's anything special about this. Or these petty little nits that have been picked. All nits are petty. Sorry to be redundant. But, let me just add a little kicker, a final question. Would we be talking about any of this if she weren't so darn pretty?
Oh, no, probably not.
It's all about how pretty. When I wrote my Sarah Palin is dumb post, I got a real taste of what it feels like when you attack Sarah. Everyone was saying, "Oh, because she's prettier than you," and it was so totally sexist. It was so, cat fight. Women don't like other women, and I totally got it myself. So
right, and I'm willing to stipulate to the fact that
thing about the fact that she's pretty.
Well, the thing is, do you think... look, I'm willing to stipulate to the fact that Sarah Palin is prettier than me, and I wish I looked like Sarah Palin. However, I also think that it's not this says that we wouldn't be talking about her if she wasn't so pretty. I don't think she would have been the vice presidential nominee if she wasn't so pretty. Which is itself, which is itself a kind of deeply sexist state of affairs.
I know. Why aren't we? Why don't we care about Mitch Daniels?
Well...
First of all,
I don't know if I would care about Mitch Daniels even if he looked like Brad Pitt, but...
He's bald. Mitch Daniels is bald.
Okay, well, I think that we've come to a couple of points of agreement across our yawning ideological gulf. And one is that Katie Couric should post the transcripts.
Right.
And two is that Sarah Palin has been catapulted into the center of all of our consciousness because she's incredibly attractive.
Yeah. And because she is we don't agree on this. She is a screen onto which conservatives can project hopes, just as liberals projected hopes.
Well, I think we agree with that. I think that I can agree with that.
And is it a phenomenon we should be critical of? I mean, Barack Obama is already president. It's too late to do anything about that. But should Americans raise their game and stop just falling for pretty glossy candidates who...
right, and obviously I don't feel like that's what Barack Obama is, in as much as, I think it's kind of... I think that this, kind of frantic searching for a charismatic savior doesn't bode well.
Yeah. I don't want to be saved. I just want a president. I just want a caretaker president. I want a president who will get in there and just take care of things and not change too much. A little incremental tweaking. Just keep us, preserve us. That's what I want. Could someone please step forward and offer to do that?
I think that's what we've got. I can
I thought that's what I might get from him, and I did vote for him. So I wish if he's watching this Blogging Heads, I'd like to encourage him to do that. But I don't think he's surrounded.
Oh God, if he's watching this Blogging Heads, I would like to encourage him to get back to work.
He's wasting his time. What is he doing? Get to work.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we can wrap it up. But okay. Well, I'm glad that we persisted. So thank you so much.
Thanks for not hanging up on me. I once had a Blogging Heads where I almost hung up on somebody, but I didn't. That? Oh, me and Baron's Frankie Ruda.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, we got so heated in the middle that this could go viral. You realize that, Michelle? Are you ready for
that?
What
could?
This little dialogue, the part where we got all exercised. Well, it's not too late to make your side of the recording malfunction, and then it would never be seen. But I think we should be bold and let people see it.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.